As we get through the final parts of the course, I think it's really powerful to remember that you need to set a schedule of some consistency when you're doing job search related activities. I think people get way too ingrained in the apply and wait type of mindset. There are so many different activities that one could be doing during this entire time that you're looking for a new job, especially if you are currently unemployed. So, the way that HR people work is basically they usually post Mondays on job boards. That's like what they're focused on doing is getting all the jobs republished and out into the network. Then by Tuesday, they can start going through the different applications and looking at the specific requirements and figuring out who fits and who's worthy of interviewing. Then they're sending out emails, making phone calls by Wednesday. Thursday, they start doing more of the phone calls, more emails, more of the interviews. And by Friday, they're setting aside most of the day for interviews and then reposting any additional jobs as needed. This is a real schedule. And if you watch this creator, this is an HR professional, they'll explain step by step exactly what happens. So by that standard, you should be doing Monday, Tuesday, and some of Wednesday on applications. By Wednesday, it's probably other job search stuff, to be totally honest. And by Thursday, other job search stuff. And Friday, maybe you take off or do other job search stuff. Not all days are treated equally. I promise they are not. So, what are some of those other activities that we could be doing? Well, if you spent all your time on job boards, you run the risk of burning yourself out and just refusing to apply because what's the point? And if you've gotten this far in the course, there's a high likelihood you may be of that mentality. I don't know. So, one of the things that I think is really helpful is taking a look at other activities through the lens of a schedule. So these are all the other activities, not all, but these are many of the other activities that one could throw themselves into and actually spend time on instead of doing direct job search related stuff. In the first tab, I've given a mock understanding of what a job search calendar would look like on a weekly basis. So you can see Monday, Tuesday is mostly like job search related stuff. Then we get into like content creation. There's lots of like networking happening here. Then we have a lot more of the LinkedIn connections, doing a little bit of job applications, then networking, and then some job board stuff maybe in the afternoon if we feel like it, followed by learning or skill enhancement, doing some follow ups, finding unique companies, and then Friday, keep it light. This is a very different schedule than I think most people are used to because people get into this reducing things to a default mode of thinking, which is just find job applications and endlessly apply with minimal amounts of effort. That won't work in a modern day and a modern environment. I promise you, it's not working now. So there's plenty of job seeker activities. There's the standard stuff that I've already gone over, and that's the majority of what you've seen within this course. There's personal brand and content creation. There's upskilling. There's all sorts of events online and in person. There's freelance stuff. There's positive mind and body. That needs to be all kind of part of your schedule in order to maintain something in the way of sanity. So we are super familiar with the standard job search activities. Like I'm not going to recover this stuff. You guys get it. I'm fairly certain that you've gotten this far in the course. You know there's a lot of things that you could be doing. I would think that a lot of people, if they're capable of picking up and learning some of these different tactics, that it wouldn't be that big of a leap to go out and start creating content. This is your personal brand, and it allows you to select an audience, find some good pieces of content for inspiration, try to break them apart into different formats, and then we go create something, and then we find distribution channels, whether it's our own or communities where people will consume this content. There are lots and lots of creator tools that I'm going to go into once we get into that portion of the course. It's coming up real soon. The next thing could just be upskilling. Build new capabilities and skill sets by learning or doing skill enhancement. Get certifications. There's all sorts of certifications that are free that anybody can go do. Do skill assessments. Do some tutorials, do some practice. And there's lots of online course platforms, some paid, some free, that allow you to really boost your worth, but also your capabilities, which I think is so undervalued these days in terms of what you can actually do. I keep telling people just go out and build anything. There are so many new ways of being able to build using AI. It's baffling that more people haven't picked up the tools. I think people like talking about it a heck of a lot more than they like doing it. Mix a hobby in with AI, and then you got something really cool. We'll cover some of that stuff later. Events. I have been a huge event person most of my life. Prior to getting to Denmark, I was going to 2 to 3 networking events per week for years. And it is free education, but also an awesome chance to meet the movers and the shakers before they arrive at, the peak of basically not having to go to events anymore. I find that networking at events allows for learning. It allows for some opportunities to do personal branding and speaking. And there's lots of flavors of events. There's networking events that are in person. There's meetups that are in person. There's webinars and digital events that are fully online. There's conferences that are specific to your niche or industry that are in person. There's hackathons. And I know that's not necessarily a huge thing outside of blockchain, crypto, or Web3, but man, it's actually really interesting to go to those. There's job fairs, which I think for the most part are kind of a waste of time, but if you're entry level and really need the right angle, then why not? There's even pitch competitions, which at the right time and the right circumstances, you could probably find yourself into an interesting conversation and at least led into a potential for an opportunity. I've included a lot of the resources here, and I will cover some of this stuff shortly. There's lots of freelance opportunities. If you really need to make some money in the immediate and you can't afford to be sitting on your hands, then why not build experience while you're waiting around? There's paid versus unpaid, there's freelance marketplaces, there's lots of startup advisory and mentorship stuff that's constantly out there that even if you don't have a ton of experience, you can literally sit back and just give like plain advice. I've seen really bad mentors, so I promise you there is no minimum bar for that, as much as I'd like to think there isn't. And so I've included a ton of resources for that stuff, but we will go into that briefly later. As far as positive body and mind, I need to work on this myself. I think the consistency of non-work or non-job search related activities is super important when it comes to sleep, when it comes to physical exercise, reading nonfiction, stuff that isn't, like brain rot kind of stuff, stopping yourself from doom scrolling, practicing mindfulness, volunteering or journaling, or even just sticking with some of those hobbies that maybe you're just not great at doing on a regular basis. Eliminating bad habits is a huge win if you can pull it off, and maintaining some healthy friendships, even if you don't have a ton of money to throw around, is super important and it helps you maintain your sanity. If there's anything that you really want within this course or in addition to this course, I'm happy to build it. I've built a bunch of different segments beyond this, but please check out the Discord and get in there and say, yo, I would really like to have some of this stuff. So the last little kind of tidbit that I'm going to show on this kind of schedule segment is more about what to do if you feel stuck. And I think this person has the absolute right idea, and I've linked to the video here, so just pause and watch.